When working with Analysis Engine and Reporting Manager by Babbage Systems, there are two main factors that affect the layout of exported data. The first is defined in the data export's definition. We'll call it the data export layout. The second is defined in reporting events within Reporting Manager. We'll call this the spawn direction. The layout options in the data export dictate how the rows of data appear when the data export is run. These are configured in the data export editor within Analysis Engine or the data export window in Reporting Manager. There are two settings here to make note of. The first is the column layout. The column layout option specifies whether the columns in the data export will be placed side by side, as in the standard layout, or whether they'll be placed on top of one another, as in the stacked layout. For example, consider this data export that shows sessions by city. This first example shows the standard layout for this. All of the columns line up side by side as in a standard table. The color in these examples has been added for clarification. In contrast, this example shows the stacked layout. Here, the columns are stacked on top of each other instead. The second setting for data exports is the time interval layout. This option only appears if you are running a data export that pulls data by a time interval, meaning that data is not pulled all at once. There are two options for the time interval layout, horizontal and vertical. If you choose a horizontal layout, each interval of data will be placed to the right of the previous one, meaning that your time periods move from left to right in your output. If you choose a vertical layout, each interval of data will be placed below the previous ones, meaning that your time interval periods move from top to bottom in your output. Let's look at our previous example again. Suppose that we pull our export of sessions by city by week. If we choose a standard layout for the column layout and a horizontal layout for the time intervals, we'll get something that looks like this. Our table is repeated to the right for each interval we pull. If we choose the stacked layout for the column layout and a horizontal layout for time intervals, we will see that our table is still repeated to the right for every interval, but this time the columns are stacked on top of each other. On the other hand, we can use a vertical layout for time intervals as well. If we use a standard layout for the column layout and a vertical layout for time intervals, you'll see a standard table that repeats itself for each time interval as we move downward. Note also that the column headers are not repeated in the vertical layout. For a stacked layout with the vertical layout option, you'll see that each column is still repeated vertically, but that each column is actually completed for all time intervals before the next one begins. These time interval options are useful when you want to pull data reflecting several time intervals in one go, but they're not as useful for refreshable reporting in Excel. That's where Reporting Manager comes in. In Reporting Manager, reporting events have a spawn direction, which is defined in the Reporting Event Editor within the Spawn Details section. There are three options for spawn direction: horizontal, vertical, and replace. If you choose the horizontal option, each new time interval that you pull when you refresh your report will appear to the right of your previous data, as in this example. If you choose the vertical option, each new time interval that you pull when you refresh your report will appear below your previous data, as in this example. Note that for this, you can choose whether or not you want to include your column headers on each pull. When you use the Smart Interval feature to determine your time intervals, you can also choose to include column headers only on the first interval. If you choose the Replace option, every time you refresh your dashboard, your previous data will be erased and the new data will be dropped in its place. If your output has a variable size, be sure to turn on the Smart Interval feature to ensure that the entire table of old data is deleted when you replace it. By using a combination of the column layouts and the time interval layouts in data exports, and the spawn direction in reporting events, there is a wide range of available layouts for your reporting. Experiment with these features to find the layout that works best for your reports.